Hey, it's Boo Ray Perry from Tampa, Florida, and time for once again another round of Fuji X100 image reviews. I want to thank everybody who participated this time around. Our theme was black and white. I said you could put anything as long as it was in black and white. I had one person who put in a color image. There's always one. But everybody put in some great black and whites. There was a lot of participation. So unlike last month where we had a smaller participation, I was able to do every image. Again, I'm not going to be able to do every image this month. We just don't have the time for it. So I've picked out 11 images that we're going to go through, some themes in there, some ideas and some things that I want to talk about. If I didn't pick your image, don't feel bad. Maybe I'll pick your image next time. I did want to talk real quick about my process when I look at these images, how I decide what I'm going to talk about, how I decide what I'm going to pick, because I know that if you're putting images in and your image is being picked, you're wondering, why didn't he pick my image? So I can tell you that with all image competition and all judging, there's all this criteria that people look for, but number one is always impact. So the first thing I do is I open up everything in my browser, all the images that were sent in, and I bring each one of them up full size in turn as I go through. And then what I'm looking for is an image that makes me want to stop browsing. That is the first thing I'm looking for. Now, the argument can be made that, well, yeah, but some images, you got to look at them for a while before you really begin to appreciate them. And that's true. But you have to, you can't look at every image for 10 minutes, right? The image has to have some impact. It has to be able to grab you right away to make you say either, ooh, that's interesting, or what is that? Or even sometimes just a question. Sometimes an image will come up and I'll just go, well, okay, that one's worth looking at. So I go through and I just mark all the images I think these are the ones that are worth looking at. So that's the preliminary round, and most people get eliminated right there because you have to remember that when you're looking at a picture that's an abstract thing for me, and I didn't take the picture, I wasn't there, I don't know who the picture's of or what the circumstances were, that when you remove all of that from an image, it removes a lot of the emotion that is attached to the image for the person who took the picture. So when you take a picture, you have the experience of taking the picture, and you can't deny that experience. It can't be taken away from you. You got it, right? And it's going to influence whether or not you like the picture, whether or not you like it or not. But I don't have that experience. All I have is this flat, plain, two-dimensional thing in front of me, and something about that image, something about the story, something about the artistry, something about who knows, has got to grab me and make me want to look at it longer than a few seconds. So that eliminates most of the people. Now, I go back to the ones that I've picked, and I go through them again, and what I look for is either an image that is so strong and so good that I want to reward the person who sent it in by showing it and talking about it. B, an image that is kind of strong but could be better, and I can see where there's a teaching moment there. I can see where I can show something that might help that person or any photographer watching to maybe be able to make this change in their own photography. And then I guess there's a C category, which is when I see an image that seems to be following a theme. So sometimes you'll see that I'll have images that I pick that are following a theme because I'll see the same thing over and over again. Like I'll see the same mistake, what's a mistake, being made, and I want to point it out. Like, look here, here, and here. Can you see how this is happening to a lot of people? And it's also one of the ways of me saying that, listen, you're not alone. Everybody makes mistakes. This is a learning process. So just roll with it. Just take some notes and use them or don't use them. It's entirely up to you. But I'm very, very cautious about hurting people's feelings. It's very hard to do this. You think it's easy, but it's not, because it would be very easy just to have an image come up and go, no, that sucks. You can't do that, right? You have to be able to talk in a constructive way. You have to be able to help people, because that's what this is all about. So that's the process that I go through. So if your image doesn't get chosen, if I'm not showing your image, then what does it say about your image? Well, it doesn't mean your image sucks. What it means is either your image doesn't have impact when it comes up on the screen enough for a person who knows nothing about it to just go, hey, that's a good image. Or number two, your image has some fatal flaws. Because if an image has some fatal flaws, some things in it that are just, to me, like this never should have been shown to anybody, then that image doesn't get picked. because I don't want to say that to you. I don't want to put your image up and say that to you, right? So if you want that to happen, I can do that privately, but I'm not going to do it here publicly. Hopefully when you watch the images, when I review them, hopefully you will see the things I say, and then you can apply those to your own image, and you can kind of figure out what the areas were maybe that didn't stand out for me in your image. So what's the next one going to be? We got to do another one, right, for another 2 weeks. So my next topic is going to be a free-for-all. In the next series, you can enter in any image that you like. It can be in color or black and white. It can be sepia for all I care. It can be anything that you want. The one thing I'm going to change this time is I'm going to allow a little bit more Photoshop. In the past, I've said you can't remove or add anything to your image. So for this next one, I'm going to say you can remove things from your image. You cannot add them. So you can't be like, well, this beach picture would be better if there was a puppy on it, and then add a puppy in Photoshop. No. You can't say this sky is no good, so let me add a sky. No. We don't want to add stuff to the image, because our goal here is to be able to take the picture in camera and have it be correct without having to add something. Our goal is to find the photograph and take a good photograph. That being said, we cannot deny that there are many, many times, and I'll talk about in some of the pictures I'm going to talk about today, there are many, many times where you find the photograph is there, but you just can't take it because there are people who you can't get out of your shot, because there's some object in your frame that you can't move, a sign or something along those lines. So I want to give you that freedom to remove those things if you think it makes your image better. And I'm putting this caveat in now because I find myself so many times when I'm looking at images saying, this image would be better if you took this out. And then I told you couldn't take stuff out. So I can't really give you that advice, right? So now you can. You can take stuff out. So this is going to be a little bit more post-processing done on the next round of images, but you can put in any image that you want of anything, person, place, thing, animal, pet, I don't care, color, black and white. But you do have a little bit more freedom. So this is a chance for you to really shine, to find your favorite image, and say, this is the one I want to put in, and see if he picks this one this week. I do have one more question to ask you before we get started on the reviews this week, and it's that I'm trying to put together something, and there's a couple of different things I can think about doing. One is some sort of a class that I would do, say, over Zoom, where I would have a select number of people in the class, and we would have some sort of a criteria where we would take images every week, and then we'd review those images together and look at them and talk about them with the goal of making everyone a better photographer. And this would be a paid class, because I have to come up with ways to make money to support this channel. And the problem that I'm having is I don't know where to start. Like, I don't know what the level is of the people who watch my channel. I think it's a pretty wide level, but like, do people need a class where I explain what the exposure triangle is? Or is everyone who's watching my videos aware of that? What is it that you want to learn? I guess that's what I'm really looking for. So down in the comments, if you're the person who says, I like Bure and I like his teaching style, I kind of wish he would teach a class on this, or he would teach a class on that. I would really appreciate that feedback. Go in the comments and talk about that a little bit. And the other thing I'm thinking about doing is creating some sort of a thing that's not a class situation, but rather a course that would be like a series of videos and instruction that would walk you through how to do X better. And I just don't know where to start. I mean, that's the thing about photography. There's so much that you can teach. Where do you start? It's not like driving a car, right? Where do you start? Do you start with, okay, how to be a photographer? First, this is how you turn on your camera. Well, that's too early. But, the exposure triangle, the inverse square law, composition, the details of the particular camera. Like my wife is like, you should be doing a video series that people can purchase that just walks them through everything on the X100V, everything on how to do with that camera. And that's not necessarily a bad idea, but I just don't know where to start. I'm just befuddled over what do people want? What do you feel you're not finding out there? Or what is it about me and my style that you think if Bure taught this, I think it would be more effective? Because that's my main concern. As much as I want to do these things to try and make a little bit of money, I really want them to be effective. I want people to go, wow, this was so worth it. So go crazy in the comments and let me know, what would you like to see me teach? What class would you sign up for? What course would you buy? And maybe I can get some ideas and try and put something together. All right, I think that's everything. Yep, that's everything. I've got little notes over here. That's everything I want to talk about. So let's look at some images. Let's start off with an image that I love. This is a fantastic image, and there's a reason I put it right up at the top. That this is an example of something that I think is very valuable when it comes to black and white photography, and something that you're going to hear me mention a couple of times in the course of looking at images today. And that is a good level of contrast in the blacks and the whites. And also, you want to work your levels. If you don't know much about levels, your levels fix it so that something in your image is completely black and something in your image is completely white. So you get a full range in between black and white in your image, and this is what makes your images pop, especially black and white images. Now, it doesn't have to be this way all the time. There are images that are mostly gray that can have a lot of impact, but for black and white, you tend to want to really see both ends of the spectrum, and that's what you're seeing here with this image. I'm talking about the black and white and the color toning of this image, the black and white toning of this image. I'm not really talking about the image itself so much because there's a lot to say there too. This is a lovely image. The three stacks, the symmetry of it, the way you've got the light and the dark interacting with each other all the way through the image. When you go to the top of the image, you've got the light interacting with the dark sky. In the bottom, you've got the light in the buildings interacting with the dark shadows. There's just a lot to love in this image. But the reason I'm showing it first is because I want you to look at this so that you can see in my subsequent images where this is not existing. Things I would change in this image, this area up here, I didn't even notice that this was the top of the smokestack the first time I saw the picture. So if we could bring a little bit of this detail back, that would be nice. The sky there's not much detail in the sky, but I'm okay with that because that's the nature of the image. I mean, you could say that there's possibly some blown out whites on the smokestack, but I'm okay with that because the contrast in the image is so strong, and the symmetry and the stripes in the smokestack and the buildings are all the same. I mean, it's just lovely. It's just lovely to look at. This is an image that you could put on your wall, and people would just stop and look at it because it's fun to look at, and that's really all you can hope for when it comes to trying to produce a good image. So this is an image, and again, you're going to see a lot of contrast in this, and I like that. I like that there's darks. I like that there's lights. I like that this image pops. The thing about this image, and you're going to hear me say this a lot, is there's an image here. There's an image here. I think we just missed it a little bit, but kudos for seeing the image and for seeing the water and for recognizing, that I can reflect the staircase in the water. You're 90% of the way there, and I can tell you that I am 90% of the way there on 90% of my images. I have so many images just like this where I'm just like, yeah, it's okay, but something's not quite there, and I'm not sure what it is. In this image, I think it has something to do with the fact that, first of all, our dividing line is right in the center of the image, right? So we've got our horizon line basically is right in the center of the image, splitting it clean. So if you're going to have a mirror image split clean, it really needs to be a mirror image. And where this starts to lose its mirror-like image qualities is that this down here is muddy compared to this up here. So this is bright and sharp, and this is not. So as a result, it's not a true mirror image. When you think about mirror images where you see like a mountain range reflected in a lake, the mountain that's reflected in the lake almost looks identical to the mountain that's actually there. It is so crisp and clean of a reflection, and that's what makes it incredible. But in this case, it's not so crisp and clean. Also, your dividing line is really wide, and it's really bright, which really draws attention to this dividing line. So I don't know if maybe you could get lower to make this dividing concrete minimize here. So, ideally you want this staircase to lead right into this staircase. And I also wonder if there's a lot of space over here that doesn't play. Like this is just distracting over here. These parts are just distracting. Really, this staircase here is where your shot is. So I wonder if you had shot this something more along these lines. You want it to be wider than this. You want to go, I'm just going to go unconstrained just for the purposes of this. But something more along these lines might have worked better. I'm not sure. But now you're removing the distractions to the left and to the right. The leading lines are more obvious. Right? So you see what I'm saying? But there's also an example when I was talking about removing things. Like if you were to put this image in next time, I would take this pole out. See this pole? I'd remove this pole from both sides, and this image would become infinitely better. I would also take out this thing up here. I would take this thing out right here. I'd bring down the shadows here and over here. I'd bring down the shadows in the center. And then I think the image would have more pop and be better all the way around. Contrast. Once again, this is a wonderful photojournalistic style image, and there's great contrast here. You've got hard blacks, you've got bright whites, he silhouettes up against the sky. This is a wonderful image. In a perfect world, this person wouldn't be in it back here, but I see how if you try and crop that person out, he's going to be too close to the wall, so what are you going to do? You have to do with you got to work with what you got because it is what it is. In post-processing on this image, I would try and take down some of the brights that are away from him. He's your subject. So you see this, how hot this hat is here, how hot this spot is. See this hot hand? He's hot. I would take some of this down if I could. Now you can't take it all down because you need the contrast of this bright white. And this was fine actually because this is a concert. You're supposed to have the light flare and everything that goes with the theme. But I would try and take some of this down to make him stand out even more. But good job on this image. I like this image. Now we're starting to move into a different direction. This image may be the reason that I decided that our next set of images you can take things out. Because there are so many things in this image that could be taken out. Take the dog out, take the little boy out, take the family here out. Now you've got something. Now you've got these people and they're silhouetted on this beach. Your next step is, I think, again, there's a picture here. But I think that as we see so many times in these situations, there are too many elements in this image to make anything stand out as being the focus. And you really want a focus point of an image. We've got a horizon line that is almost through the middle. I mean, here's your horizon line with the things, but here's your ocean horizon line. It's almost in the middle. You've got these hills back here, but they're not really interesting hills. There's not much interesting about the sky. So what you want to see with a picture like this, and take it from a guy who did a lot of pictures of people on the beach, is you want it to be all about this nice, glossy, reflective, landscape leading into these people and their shadows. That's where your picture is. And if you're not going to go with that, then you want it to be these people leading into this sky. But this just interrupts your whole image. Now, I wouldn't advise in Photoshop trying to take this whole mountain out. But when I see this image, again, I think there's a picture here. If this was mine, I'd be like, okay, I need to go back here because working with this glossy, this is where the stuff is right here. This is the picture in all this glossy area. If you can figure out a way to get this to be a big canvas where you place some people or some objects, then you're going to see something that's really going to pop. Oh, and the other thing is, you notice how it's kind of muddy, right? There's blacks, but there's a few whites, but for the most part, the contrast isn't really clean. So don't be afraid to boost that contrast up a little bit. There's a setting in Photoshop called soft light. Soft light does that real well too, and it would boost this. Don't have to do it. Again, muddy can work. But with black and white, the more pop you have, usually the better effect it has on your image. This is a nice photojournalistic image here. The tones are good, right? We've got good between the blacks and the whites. There's no pure whites in here, but I don't want to harp on that. It doesn't have to always have pure whites in it. But this would have popped more if you had gotten your levels a little bit more in line, so that the whites were a little bit brighter. You don't want to blow out, but you want them a little bit brighter. That being said, it's still just a good photojournalistic image. There's a lot that comes together here. The fact that you're silhouetted against the sky makes it so that you can't ignore them. The fact that you got this big problem right here in the middle of your image, but somehow you managed to keep it out of her face and out of his face is great. I love that this guy's on his phone while he's holding the sign. There's a lot of story here, the pipe of the truck. So I really enjoy this from a photojournalistic point of view. When I saw it, I was like, oh, there's a story here. And I would like to know more about this story. What's going on here? Is this a protest, or this looks like one of those things they blow at soccer matches? So is this they're celebrating a soccer win, or I don't know what's going on here, but there's definitely a story here, and I like that. I'm not sure if the crop wouldn't be better, maybe if it was more, if we eliminated some of the stuff to the right and to the left, because this is kind of dead over here, and this is all kind of dead over here. But I'm not sure. This may absolutely be the best crop for this image. So good job, Abigail. I like this image. I have to commend you on this one, David, because I think it kind of takes guts to do this. This is what's called a high key image. A high key image is mostly whites, and it is a hard thing to do well because there's so many ways that you can screw it up. And I'll be the first one to tell you that I'm not that great at it. I don't try to do it very much, is why I'm not that great at it. But this is pretty well done. I had to come back to it a couple of times because it came up and I looked at it and I was like, oh, high key, but I see these problems. And then I went back and I looked at it and looked at it and looked at it and I was like, I'm not sure that those are problems that can be fixed. I'm not sure that this isn't actually the way this image is supposed to look. My first problem is that the whites down below the tree line here are just too blown out and too white. When you look at this high key image, if you look at the trees in the middle, if you just look at that part, right? If you just look at, let me get the thing here. If you just look at this part, that to me, that's a little big and a little close. But you see how there's high key white areas, but they're minimal compared to what is a whole gamut of darks and lights, right? And then when you take this back out to full size, you start to see that there's this huge swath of pure white at the bottom of the image. And I get that this white and this white serve as a border, right? So you get, basically there's three stripes going through this picture. There's the bottom stripe of white, there's the middle stripe, that's your middle ground, and there's the top stripe of pure white. But I'm not so sure that it wouldn't be better if the whole thing was just a little bit more of the middle so that the top and the bottom of the frame, so to speak, were smaller. Because you can run into that problem where you frame something, I mean literally with a frame, and the frame is too big for the image. You want the frame to be just the right size. So this might be a better crop right here. Because without this crop, the top and the bottom are so big that it starts to minimize the center. Again, I can't be sure about that. This may be the best crop for this image. Yeah, but I like it. And a good job and a gutsy job. It takes guts to try and go into high key because it is so easy to screw it up. So good job on this one. All right, a little bit of sharpening, right? A little bit of what's the word? Not sharpening. What's the other thing? Not sharpening. Not contrast. I forget the name of it now, but you know what I'm talking about. And you really boosted it. And you see this a lot in competition. We joke that if you want to have an image that merits in competition, just take a picture of an old man and then turn the sharpness up, to full, so it gets all crusty and it looks cool and dynamic, and people are going to like it. And that's what's happening here. So, yes, interesting image, yes. But let's talk about the things that pull away from this image, and mainly it's the background. Because he is all crusty and his shirt is all crusty and there's all this detail in here, but there's also all this detail in the background. And that causes a problem. So this image would be better if you had shot this with some sort of a solid background, if you could have moved him or something along those lines. Of course, the problem is when you're taking this image, you don't know that you're going to do this to it. You don't know that when you get it home, you're going to decide to crank it up, right? And then you get home and you crank it up and it does this to the background and you go, oh. But I think the background distracts too much from him. Other than that, it's nice. I like him. A little more light over here would have been nice, but at least we can see the eye. So that's good. If we had turned his face towards the light a little bit more, that might have helped a little bit. But as it is, still, it's a good portrait. This is not an amateur picture. This is a picture by somebody who is using intent to figure out how they're going to shoot something, so I like that. By contrast, we come to this image. Look at the difference between the two, here and here. So this is an image, again, directional light. But look at the contrast. It's lacking it. We have so much dark black in here and very little white. We have some midtones and dark midtones at that, but very little white to contrast with the black. And the light coming in goes so dark on this side that you really can't see his eye. And that's almost always a no, unless you are purposely saying, I want this person's face to be split in half by the light, and one half is visible and the other half is not visible. It's almost always bad if you can't see the other eye. Even if it's dark, you need to be able to see the other eye. So if you turn him towards the light, you catch the eye, you catch the face, that's going to help. And then crop this image down, because it's really all about his head. It's not about this shirt. It's not about any of this down here. You got to get in there and crop your images in post-processing. And if you do nothing else, post-processing can, cropping can be 50% of the game. It's just cropping your image down. But I like that there's directional light, and I like that you're recognizing and seeing the directional light. I don't know if you put it there on purpose or if you just happen to be like, oh, here's a person. But this is the first step, is looking and seeing light. You have to, when you look at everybody for the rest of your life, if you're a photographer, you have to always notice the light that is on their face. Just having a conversation with someone, you have to notice it. I've been in a drive-thru and someone will stick their head out to give me their French fries, and I will notice the light on their face. I'll notice what's right with it and what's wrong with it. And it's an addiction, but it's what makes you a better photographer. There's a picture here. There's absolutely a picture here. Man, I would love to be places where I could take images like this. You're seeing that I'm having the same themes over and over again, right? So the number one theme on this is there are too many elements, and I can't figure out what I'm supposed to be looking at. We've got the bottom element of this ground here, which is taking up almost a third of the image. Then we've got the middle of the lake, which is taking up a third of the image. Then we've got the top of the mountain and the sky, a third. And then we've got this element over here with the trees. This is all blacked up in black, right? We can't see any detail here. We're losing a lot of detail here, a lot of losses in the black. The whites are brought down, which is good, but there's just too much black. There are too many elements in this image that aren't interesting. Mainly all this stuff here. And you look at this image, you think, what's good? What's good is the mountain range and the water, and maybe a piece of the trees coming in. That's where your image is. So you got to get in there and crop it, or you got to find the right place to stand. And with landscapes especially, it's all about finding the right place to stand and finding the right angle. Am I going low? Am I going high? And finding the right lens. And then once you get home, you're going to crop it, and you got to use dodge and burn to bring up your shadows and knock down your highlights. And landscape photography, there's so much more involved in it than people know. So much work that goes into what looks like a beautiful natural picture of a valley, when in fact it took hours of work to make that image look that way. Well, there's an image here. There's definitely an image here. You can see it. That's why you're there. But it's just not quite there yet, because you've got to force me to look at something in particular. You've got to, what is this image about? Well, it's about the mountains and the lake and the trees and the shore. That's too much. It's got to be about fewer things. You got to dumb it down for us, quite frankly. We're stupid animals, and you got to dumb it down for us. So this image, I thought about this image a bit. Fog is tough to work with. So when you're working with fog, you have to know that the principal actor in your play here is the fog. So you have to think along the lines of, what is this fog doing that I can work with? How can I make this fog part of my image? How can I make this fog important to my image? And so in this image, I love the fog, but I just don't see it really being used to tell me something, or to give me, or to evoke a feeling, right? I'm looking at, I don't know if this is a barge or just a platform by the water, and there's a lot of fog. But I'm not getting a mood from it. Now, if you look over here to this side of the image, see this over here? Now, this is a mood. And you see this, a little bit of the trees, something back in here. Now we're seeing a mood. This area has a mood. But this area, it's almost, the fog is just a distraction. You're like, it's just making this whole thing muddy for me. I want this fog to tell me something. Yeah, again, if you were to put this in next month, you would take this crane out, you would take this pole out. There's a picture here. As always, there's a picture here. The water is a great canvas to work with. The fog over here is a great canvas to work with. So it just it reminds me that one night when I was in college, and I had a friend who was a photographer, and this big fog bank rolled in. So I called him. I'm like, let's go take pictures in the fog. So we grabbed our cameras, black and white film, and we went out and we around campus and we were shooting pictures in the fog. So excited. And I got back and I looked at them. I put them out and I looked at the sheets and I was like, these are horrible. There wasn't a single picture in there that was interesting. It was just foggy pictures of the campus, of the campus. And I was like, why aren't these good? Fog is supposed to be so great. And I realized that it's not just about the fog. The fog is just a tool. It's what you do with the fog that matters. And working with things like fog, working with things like rain, that's like high level art. It's really hard to do it. So don't knock yourself up if you go out on campus and you try to take pictures in the fog and nothing comes back that's great, because that's rare air up there to find a way to photograph with an environment like that and find a subject that's the right subject in the right environment that you can photograph the right way to get the image that you want. It's very, very hard to do. So don't beat yourself up about it, but instead look at it as a spur to action. Say, you know what, I can work with this. I've got a tool here that people don't have. I've got fog, and not everyone has fog. So let me go see what I can do with it next time. Don't be afraid to find something interesting and then just make a note and go, the next time there's fog, I'm going to go to that thing because I wonder what that looks like in the fog. So right off the bat, great contrast, right? You see the pop, you look at this image and look at this image. See the pop, the blacks, the whites. There's lots of contrast here, and that draws in the viewer right away. I like that the sky has been saved. I like that there's detail for the large part in the trees. The shadows are not completely blocked up. Fantastic. But the question here is, as I say so many times, where is your picture? Is it the tree? Is it the building? Is it the car? No. It's right here. It's these towers right here. And is this a mosque? I'm guessing maybe this is a mosque. I'm American and we don't have a mosque here, and so I don't ever see them, but I'm guessing maybe this is a mosque. This is your picture. Think about this image. If you could have come over here and stood by these cars over here and shot up and gotten these towers, maybe the roof of the mosque, silhouetted up against this sky with this level of contrast in the black and the white, oh, see, that would have popped. This image already pops because it's great contrast. But if you could have gotten these minarets here, these towers to stand out and become the whole focus point of the image, now you would have had something that was artistic. You know, as it is, what this is a good composition of a shot if you're trying to get a shot of the tree and the cars and the building and the towers and the mosque and the sky all in one picture. Good job. In the same way that if you're trying to take a picture of 6 people and you got to group them and put the tall people in the back and make sure that nobody's head is in front of somebody else's head, and you manage to do that, a good job with your posing, right? And that's what this is. Good job with your composition to get all this to work together. But within this composition is the real picture. Go find that real picture and shoot that. Yeah, because there's so much here that you're doing right and that you recognize and that you see. You just need to take it to the next step of applying all of that to the perfect subject. So that's it. That's about 11 images, and I hope that I talked about your image. I hope that you liked what I had to say and that I wasn't too negative or too critical, but that's, you know, it's hard to talk about things without it being negative, so I apologize if anybody gets offended in the things that I say. It's certainly not my intention. Also, don't forget, enter next time. Put something in. Don't be afraid if you've got an image that you put in the past and I didn't talk about it, and you think, he would have talked about it if I had done a few more things in Photoshop, then do it and put it back in. You can put an image in twice. If I've never talked about it, you can put it in Again, just remember, I don't want you to add anything to the image. Don't put in a sky. Don't drop in, no composites, but it is okay to remove something from the image if you want to remove it. But if you have to completely rebuild half the image because you removed something, no, that's not really what we're interested in. That should have been taken care of in camera. And also, don't forget to join me on Instagram. I have a funny Instagram feed at Blu-ray Perry. You can join my group on Facebook called Pro Photo Talk with Blu-ray Perry. And all of my gear is listed down in the description. I have a gear page. I list all my gear there. And if you go there and you see something that you want for your camera and you click that link, you go to Amazon, you buy it, I get a couple of dollars, and it helps me to keep this channel alive. And I really do appreciate it. All right, get to work. Let's get some more images in. I'm excited for next time. See you soon.